let's jump into the two strategies that are within rent to rent. First of all, you've got rent to HMO and rent to service accommodation. So obviously service accommodation is the one that we're going through. And what this is, a quick brief overview of rent to HMO is you rent a property from a landlord, then you would rent the rooms out on a room by room basis to multiple people, and this would increase your cash flow and the rental income. With rent service accommodation, it's the same scenario. You would take on a property and you'd be paying your normal rent, say £600 a month. And then what you would do, you put it on platforms like Airbnb, booking.com, all these different booking platforms, and you would charge a nightly rate. So it's short-term stays. So the main thing is you will be charging a super rent. The whole motto around this is you're changing the use of a property from a normal single let to either service accommodation, or you rented it on a room by room basis, depending on what strategy you choose. Now you kind of know a little bit of what rent to rent is and what rent to service accommodation is. We need to figure out what your patch is. This generally, when you're starting out, wants to be within an hour and a half of you. The closest major city, somewhere that's buzzing, maybe you're in coastal locations and it's very tourism, but there's certain patches along that coast that's really good for service accommodation. So how do you find your patch? The best way to do this is to jump onto Airbnb. So we're going to share the screen and show you how we do this. As you can see, we've pulled up Airbnb and we're going to use anywhere, so let's say Shrewsbury. So let's go Shrewsbury. I've already been searching this area, and as you can see, there is Airbnbs in the area. So let's click on this one. So obviously this one's working. You want to go down to where their calendar is, and you'll see if they're being booked up. So as you can see, in December, they're already starting to get booked up, and also into January. So if we come off of this one, let's look at another one. Let's go on this one here. Tyre rental unit, 4 guests, 1 bedroom, 1 bed. So it's probably a 1 bedroom flat or a 1 bed house. We'll go down again, December and January starting to book up. So all in all, it looks like it's a pretty decent area. Obviously, you will look more into the area and you will look more into what's going on, what things are for people to do, and all of this, which we'll go into later on. So once you found your area, we're going to go on to Rightmove. Shrewsbury, Shropshire, to rent. And then maybe you just want to do 1 bed flats, but for the meantime, we'll just look across the board. You don't want to get the student housing in, so let's put a minimum of, say, 600 per month, minimum studios, and that's it. Then scroll through. You can also go onto the map. So if you want to just go city centre, we'll go over onto the map, we'll clear this area, and then we'll just go like this. And you can get really in depth, and you can just go down to certain streets and all this type of thing. It just nails down, so you're just really focused on that one area. So now we're going to exit the map. So there's 34 results at the moment. 3-bed townhouse. First one that's up. 3-bed townhouse. Looks in really, really nice condition. 1,800. Which seems pricey, but then when you're going to be doing it on a nightly rate, Obviously, you're going to go into the due diligence and see whether this would work later on, but we want to just book the viewings first. So what do you guys think? Would this be a good Airbnb? Personally, we would take this on. This is a 4-bed. This could potentially work as a HMO if you want to go down that route. We personally just like to stick with flats, apartments, find it a lot easier. You can scale it a lot quicker. So let's look on this one. 1,500. Street view, just outside of the city centre, so it's not too bad. Floor plans, lovely large kitchen dining area, 2 bedrooms, really nice property. So now you know your patch. You want to do 1, 2, even 3 different areas, and then pick your number 1. So name the number 3, which is kind of your last resort, and then number 1 being the one you're going to focus on straight away. So now that we've gone through how to find your patch and just do a little bit of looking into the area, nothing too major, you're not looking into what's going on, not yet. I want you to go and search areas that are around you and come up with your 3 locations that you think will work for rent to service accommodation. We are going into the risk assessment side of any deal that you need to carry out. So you want to do it on a worst case, best case situation. So the worst case is you break even and you don't make a profit, but you don't lose money. That's where you want to be. Your minimum profit wants to be 500 or more per month. The best way to kind of eliminate that worst case is by having a break clause in your contract. So between 3 and 6 months, depending on the deal. Personally, we've got some that are 12 months with bigger deals where we put more money in, but we've took out a lot of due diligence and done a lot of due diligence on the property before. So this is something when you go further on and you do take a bit of a bigger risk, but you can afford to take a bit of a bigger risk. So how do you eliminate the worst case? That just comes down to your due diligence. So doing loads of research on the area, on the property, looking into other Airbnbs, making sure you're conservative with your numbers, which we're going to go into later on, how to do the due diligence in detail and make sure a property works for you. Another thing we like to do is make sure it works as a single let. So say COVID happens again, or there's a situation that's out of your control, you can't run it as an Airbnb anymore. What's the worst case? You could just single let it and make 100 quid a month or something like that. This is just a backup, like worst case backup that we use. So we don't have to kind of ruin the relationship with the landlord or the agent. We can still carry on with the property, rent it out furnished, and do it more of a long style let. So you could target relocators, you could target construction workers and give them a discounted rate, but they're there for 6-7 months at a time and treat it more like a single let. You now know if you're going to manage the property yourself, if you're going to get management in place, you know the area, and you're building a really good background to get started. But we need to know what your goals are and what is a goal. So you want to find out what your personal goals are. A personal goal is, where do you want to be? What car do you want to be driving? What house do you want to live in? These are more personal goals. So for the first task, what I want you to do is to sit down and imagine what you want your life to be like. How much money do you need to get there? Do you want to live in a big 5-bed mansion? Do you want 4 holidays a year? Do you want to be driving this certain car? All these little things. Once you know this, you can work out how much you need to be earning. So for the general person to break out with a job in the UK, you're needing around 2,500 to 3 grand every month as a net profit. So that's after your tax, after everything. That's what you want to be earning. So what I want you to do is firstly to pause this video and write down what your goals are, what your personal goals are, and then we'll come back. So I hope you've got some amazing goals and you've had that all written down. What we're going to do now is work out how much that is going to cost. So if you want the 5-bed mansion and it's going to cost you 4 grand a month to rent, then you will put that into your numbers. So say in total for you to be doing, I don't know, 4 holidays a year, 2 decent nice cars, the big house, gym memberships, and just living a bit of a luxury lifestyle, you want 10 grand a month. So now you know that you need to take on so many properties. So you've got to the point, you've got your 10 grand, you know how much you need. How many properties do you need to get there? So how's rent to rent going to be your vehicle? So what I mean by this is, how are you going to use rent to rent to get you to that goal? For example, our goal by the end of the next 2 years is to have 100 more units. So we're doing this by taking on a minimum of 2 properties every month from January, making a minimum of £1,000 per month, and our maximum to put in is 6 grand to each property. So this is some detail you want to go in. You've got your time frame and all of that type of thing. If you want to be making 10 grand a month, you need 10 rent to rents, making £1 grand a month. You want to be putting 4 grand into every deal, for example, and then you need to set a time. So you want to do this by the end of 2023 or the middle of 2023. So now you've got a time scale, and we call this something known as SMART goals. So it's a specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relatable, and it's time. So time measurable, you have a timestamp on it. You've got everything planned out now. You've got your goals, you know when you need to finish it by, you know how many rents you need, and you're ready to go. The only issue is, how do we fund it? So if you're starting with no money at all, then it's going to be a little bit harder. It's going to be a little bit more work, which that doesn't matter. If you've got to put in the time and graft to do it, you still can do it. So personally, from our experience, a lot of our deals, we've not put in our own money. So what I mean by this, we've JV'd with investors. We've pulled money from credit cards and all these different things and leveraged the money to be making a monthly cash flow. You then pay the investors back or the credit cards back and do it this way. So obviously you want to know how much you need in each property. So you should have done that in your goal setting. So say you've gone for 4 grand as we used in the example, then to get to the 10, you're going to need 40 grand. Obviously, if you're doing it over the 6 months or over the year, As you build this portfolio up, you're having more cash flow. That cash flow can be put into buying more rent to rent. And this is how you scale. We